Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the League of Biblical Enthusiasts. We continue with our series, Cities of the New Testament. In our last episode, we discussed Capernaum, the town where Jesus launched his public ministry. We discussed the two significant sites on the Franciscan property. The first is the 5th century limestone synagogue, and what may be identified as a 1st century synagogue underneath it. We also talked about the so-called House of Peter and the octagonal church built over it. Perhaps it should rather be known as the House of Peter's mother-in-law. And we discussed the very exciting 1986 discovery of the Jesus boat, or the Galilean boat, and how it took an amazing feat of effort over 11 days and nights to get the boat out of the water without breaking it into pieces, preserving it, moving it nearby into a situation where it could be carefully preserved. And over a period of more than a decade, it was cared for carefully so that you can now see it in Israel as it was. In today's episode, we embark on a fascinating exploration, and that is the ongoing archaeological quest to identify the last lost city of the Gospels. That would be the city of Bethsaida. Now, why is this important? Well, according to the Gospel of John, it was the home of Peter, Andrew, and Philip, and the stage for some of Jesus' most memorable miracles. It is the third most mentioned city in the New Testament, and if remains of Bethsaida from the 1st century can be found, they might help us understand a little more about the early Jesus movement and those who were its earliest followers. What kind of world did they live in? What kind of culture? What faced them day to day? And what moved them in their spirit to accept Jesus as Messiah? Well, like Capernaum, the Bethsaida of today has not survived into a modern thriving city like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Nazareth, or even Tiberias. It's frankly more of a desolate site that is visited just a few times a year by archaeologists to continue their work. So before, pardon the pun, we dig into the archaeology of biblical Bethsaida, let's talk about how it reveals itself in the record of the New Testament. What do the four Gospels tell us about Bethsaida? What happened there? Why is it significant from the story of the life of Jesus and his disciples? So let's review the 7 references to Bethsaida and see what they have to tell us. According to John chapter 1 and 12, it was the home of Peter, Andrew, and Philip. According to Luke chapter 9, it was at or near Bethsaida that Jesus taught the crowds who followed him, and he also healed the sick there. Later in that account, that same day, Jesus feeds the 5,000 near Bethsaida. In Mark 6, we read that it was in the vicinity of Bethsaida that Jesus walked on water in the Sea of Galilee. In Mark 8, it was at Bethsaida where some people brought a blind man to Jesus and begged him to heal him. He took the blind man by the hand, led him outside the village, and he did heal him. In both Matthew 11 and Luke 10, Jesus pronounced a woe upon Bethsaida and Chorazin. He said, "Woe to you, Bethsaida, for if the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago, sitting in sackcloth and ashes." It is those 3 cities, in fact, Capernaum, Bethsaida, and Chorazin, where Jesus performed many miracles and taught his disciples and the crowds. And this area is known as the Evangelical Triangle due to the amount of time and effort Jesus spent there. Bethsaida has been called the last lost city of the Gospels, and I heard this phrase from Dr. Notley, who we will hear more from later. For nearly 2,000 years, the location of Bethsaida remained a mystery to crusaders, to pilgrims, and scholars. By the 4th century CE, many of the sites associated with the New Testament had already been discovered, except Bethsaida. no one place was consistently identified as Bethsaida. Researchers have uncovered 27 pilgrim accounts that describe their attempts to find the city, and by the 1800s, archaeology began to develop on more secure scientific principles, and two theories emerged as to the location of biblical Bethsaida. In this year, 2025, two archaeological sites claim to be the original biblical Bethsaida. The first is Et-Tell, and the second, El-Araj. The two sites are very close to each other, and here they are displayed on a map. Now let's talk about the early exploration of the area around Bethsaida. In the 1800s, four noteworthy researcher explorers commented upon biblical Bethsaida. One favored Et-Tell, and the other three favored El-Araj. The first of the four, Edward Robinson, who is considered the father of biblical geography, believed Et-Tell was the true site of Bethsaida. He described his visit and conclusions in Volume 3, page 308, of his magnum opus, Biblical Researches in Palestine, published in 1841. The other three favored El-Araj due to its proximity to the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River. However, they lacked the archaeological evidence to support their claim definitively. One was Gottlieb Schumacher, a German-American engineer and surveyor who conducted extensive surveys in the Holy Land in the late 19th century. He preferred El-Araj, and here is his map noting both El-Araj and Et-Tell at the north end of the Sea of Galilee. Another explorer, Claude Conder, was a British officer who conducted a survey of Western Palestine from 1871 to 1877 under the direction of the Palestine Exploration Fund. He identified El-Araj in his maps and writings, and while he did not definitively claim it as Bethsaida, he acknowledged it as one of the potential sites based on topographical and historical clues. Then there was Gustav Dahlmann, a German theologian and geographer of Palestine. He also favored El-Araj over Et-Tell, largely because of its proximity to the Sea of Galilee, which aligned more closely with the New Testament description of Bethsaida as a fishing village. In the early mid to 20th century, the focus shifted to Et-Tell, located about 1.25 miles inland. Many scholars endorsed Et-Tell as Bethsaida based on Iron Age remains and its size. Today, in June of 2025, the consensus, if there is one emerging, centers increasingly on El-Araj for reasons we will discuss soon. Let's first look at Et-Tell and its evidence for being the biblical Bethsaida. Modern archaeological work at Et-Tell first begun in 1987 with Dr. Rami Arav and his team. Dr. Arav teaches in the Department of History and the Department of Philosophy and Religion at the University of Nebraska, Omaha campus. He is extensively published on the archaeology and history of the land of Israel and, of course, Et-Tell in particular. He has directed numerous archaeological excavations, including at the Cave of Letters, near the western shore of the Dead Sea. In 1987, Dr. Arab undertook a 10-day probe of Et-Tell, and Et-Tell in Arabic simply means the mound, to determine if the 21-acre site was indeed Bethsaida. His conclusions were promising, but he knew that more work must be done to uncover the ancient layers. In 1990, Dr. Arav founded the consortium of the Bethsaida Excavation Project, which is a home at the Omaha campus of the University of Nebraska. He has led groups of students and scholars in digs there for years. Since early 2018, the primary academic partner for the Bethsaida Excavations Project has been the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. As far as I am able to tell, the last dig at Et-Tell was in 2022. At least the last field report that I see is from 2022, as reported in their official excavation website. Nonetheless, work continued at Et-Tell from 1987 at least until 2022. In 1996, Dr. Arab and his team uncovered the remains of an Iron Age city gate complex at Et-Tell, which has led scholars on a new quest to find out more about that Iron Age city that no one expected to find. And it is now believed that the Iron Age complex was the capital of the kingdom of Geshur. And Geshur is notable in the Hebrew Bible for its visit by King David and his subsequent marriage to the daughter of the king of Geshur. Excavations at Et-Tell have uncovered the remains of fortified Iron Age city, a prosperous Hellenistic city, a Jewish community in the Hasmonean period, Herodian period, an occupation in the early Roman period, settlements in the Mamluk, and a village in the late Ottoman period. Artifacts like first century pottery, coins, and fishing net weights have been found. But despite extensive excavation, the Roman period remains at Et-Tell are modest and do not look like a flourishing first century city compared to its Iron Age layers. Dr. Arab would no doubt argue differently, but archaeologists of the region are now favoring increasingly the work at El-Araj as the best candidate for biblical Bethsaida. And to that site we now turn. El-Araj is being excavated under the leadership of Professor Mordecai Aviam, known to his friends as Moti. Dr. Aviam is the director of the Institute for Galilean Archaeology at Kinneret College, which is located on the southern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Dr. Stephen Notley is the academic director at the El-Araj site. Dr. Notley was Distinguished Professor of New Testament and Christian Origins on the New York City campus of Alliance University from 2001 until 2023. He is currently Dean of the School of Religious Studies at Pillar College in Newark, New Jersey. He was awarded his PhD in Comparative Religions at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, where he studied with David Flusser, a renowned Israeli professor of early Christianity and Judaism of the Second Temple period. Dr. Notley lived 16 years in Jerusalem with his wife and 4 children, during which time he was the founding chair of the New Testament Background Program at the Jerusalem University College. He has been leading groups of students and lay people to Israel and the Eastern Mediterranean region for over 35 years. Professionally, Dr. Notley prefers to be understood as a historical geographer, though you would be forgiven for calling him an archaeologist if you saw him digging at El-Araj. The excavation process at El-Araj started in 2014 when Mark Turnage, a student of Dr. Notley, organized what is called a shovel survey under the leadership of Drs. Aviam and Notley. This involved digging and sifting the soil from 5 by 5 meter squares to a depth of about a foot. It was determined there was a settlement at El-Araj extending to over 1,000 years, spanning the Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, and Crusader periods, precisely the time frame of Bethsaida, according to historical sources. More serious excavations began in 2016 and continue to this year, 2025, which will see their 9th season of digs at El-Araj. Over the 8 years of excavations there, discoveries have led archaeologists to favor this site as the true biblical Bethsaida over Et-Tell. Here are 5 reasons why El-Araj is favored. Number 1, proximity to the Sea of Galilee. Bethsaida is described in the Gospels as a fishing village located on the northeastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. El-Araj is situated at the high water mark on the northeast side of the Sea of Galilee, near the inlet of the Jordan River. This proximity is considered a significant advantage over Et-Tell, which is located 1.25 miles or so north of the current shoreline. And you can see a visual here of Et-Tell far from the shoreline. Number 2, evidence of transformation from a small Jewish village into a Roman polis. Josephus describes Bethsaida being near the Lake of Gennesaret, Sea of Galilee, and being upgraded to a city, in Greek, a polis. And this was done by Herod Philip in 30 CE. This designation as a polis was granted, and it increased its population. Fortifications were added to the city. It was renamed Bethsaida as Julius, after the wife of either Augustus Caesar, or it could have been after the daughter of Tiberius, but it was renamed Julius. Characteristics of a polis could include a network of paved streets, public buildings like an amphitheater, Roman baths, etc. And in fact, in 2017, the excavators at El-Araj uncovered partial remains of a first-century Roman bathhouse. A Roman brick, tesserae, and a partially intact mosaic, broken clay tubules all point to the fact that this site grew beyond merely being a first-century Jewish fishing village. For Dr. Notley and others, this is clear evidence of the type of urbanization that you would expect to see in a Roman polis, because you don't find Roman bathhouses in Jewish villages. Thirdly, the discovery of a Byzantine church aligns with historical accounts. The historical record provides important context for evaluating El-Araj. A Bavarian bishop known as Willibald wrote an account from 725 CE that specifically mentions he visited a church at Bethsaida, which was built over the house of Peter and Andrew. This Byzantine church has long been sought by archaeologists as a key marker for identifying true location of biblical Bethsaida. It has now been found. And Professor Notley notes the significance of finding this church, and he says, until its recent discovery, many scholars questioned its existence. Although it is mentioned in Byzantine pilgrimage itineraries, many thought these reports were mistaken. And so the discovery of the church at El-Araj seemed to validate these historical accounts. Gilded mosaic tiles, which are typically used in the walls of ornate churches, were found in the very first season of the dig in 2016. This was an early clue suggesting the presence of a church at this site. And during the 2019 season, the fourth season of digs, the main structure of the Byzantine church was substantially unearthed and identified by the excavators. Number 4, a Mosaic inscription in the church referring to St. Peter. During the 2022 season, a significant discovery within the Byzantine church was made. Archaeologists uncovered a floor mosaic inscription that includes a petition to St. Peter, calling him chief and commander of the heavenly apostles. This is written in Greek. Now, 2 other smaller partial form mosaics were also discovered, but this was the most important. The Peter inscription was found as a large medallion, about 4 feet in diameter, set within the mosaic floor of the church. The title Chief and Commander of the Apostles is routinely used by Byzantine Christian writers to refer to the Apostle Peter. This discovery is the strongest indicator that Peter had a special association with the church and very likely dedicated to him. The discovery also corroborates Willibald's 8th century account that he visited a church that was built over the house of Peter and Andrew. So there is a strong historical memory of the house of Peter and Andrew associated with the church that was built over it to mark it as a holy site. This is similar to finds at Capernaum, in which the so-called house of Peter also has a church built over it as well. Number 5, evidence of first century occupation and fishing activity. Bethsaida was known as a first century fishing village. At the end of 2019 excavations, a geophysical study was conducted in the area of El-Araj using electromagnetic sensors operating on the ground and from a drone. The results indicate This site is actually quite large, much larger than has been exposed so far. And many houses and buildings are buried there that are just waiting to be uncovered and to tell their stories. El-Araj has yielded artifacts from the first century consistent with the Jewish fishing village, including pottery and coins, stone vessels typical of Jewish practice, fishing weights, and a mold for making fishing weights. Now, there was one small artifact recovered during the 2023 season in Area D at El-Araj. It was season 7, week 2, day 3. This item was found. What was it? It was an inkwell. Yes, an inkwell. So what's the big deal? It was found in the home of what appears to have been an ordinary fisherman, indicated by the numerous fishing weights found there. Some biblical scholars have questioned whether Jesus' disciples were literate because several were simple fishermen. This discovery challenges those assumptions. Now, does this prove Matthew personally penned his gospel and Mark penned the Gospel of Mark? Well, no. But it does give pause to the idea that ordinary Jewish fishermen were completely illiterate in the first century. After all, what is an inkwell doing in the home of a Jewish fisherman in Bethsaida? Curious minds want to know. It makes us reassess literacy among the populace in first century Galilee. It just goes to show you that it's not always the amazing large-scale discoveries that are the only artifacts worth your attention. New and groundbreaking, again, pardon the pun, insights can come in a small package, hence the inkwell. Well, let's start to wrap this up. In summary, the evidence for Et-Tell includes a long history of excavation, substantial Iron Age remains, and some disputed Roman period structures. Its primary challenge is its distance from the ancient lakeshore and the modest nature of its Roman era finds relative to the expectations for a flourishing polis. El-Araj presents evidence of first century occupation right on the shoreline, a Roman bathhouse indicative of urbanization and the change to a polis, and notably a Byzantine church with an inscription referencing Peter aligning with the historical accounts. The debate is still ongoing, but recent discoveries at El-Araj, particularly the church and the Peter Mosaic, combined with its location, leads many scholars to view it as the leading candidate for biblical Bethsaida. Now, whichever site proves to be the true biblical Bethsaida, both excavations provide insights into the life of early Jewish fishermen in the first century. To me, it is easy to imagine Jesus walking that shoreline of the Sea of Galilee around Bethsaida, keeping an eye out for devout Jewish fishermen that he would choose to be his disciples. What qualities was he looking for in them? Had he been observing several men over time? Did he have interactions with them before he called them? And why fishermen? Why Galilean fishermen? Why not choose your closest from among the Pharisees and rabbis? Certainly, wouldn't they have an advantage? But among his earliest disciples chosen were those three from Bethsaida, Peter, Andrew, and John. His decision seems to have been a wise one. As always, there is so much more that we could say about Bethsaida. We have barely scratched the surface. The rest you can find in various books, archaeological reports, papers, journals, scholarly articles, and popular articles, videos, interviews with the principals involved in the excavation. These are all available in the description box I have provided below. I will also begin to migrate many of these resources into my Substack, which I will also provide a link to in the description. Now, it may be that I will have an opportunity to speak with Dr. Notley about his work in Bethsaida and get some up-to-date information. I have some questions that I would like to ask him, such as, could both Et-Tell and El-Araj be the same ancient Bethsaida? Scott Stripling and a few other scholars think so. Why or why not? And secondly, what definitive discovery would solve the debate once and for all about the true location of Bethsaida? You may have your own questions for Dr. Notley, and please let me know in the comments, and hey, we may ask him those. If you like our content, please like and share with your like-minded friends and subscribe to the channel. We are surpassing 1,500 subscribers, and we're thankful for everyone. We'd like the channel to grow. Of course, I have no dreams that we're ever going to reach crazy numbers, but that's not important. The importance is I would like to get our content to people who are interested in it, to help educate, inform, and as much as we can without being crazy, entertain with interesting videos and objects for you to be able to see that describe the content we're bringing to you. Now, as a reminder, we have 3 series already available on our channel for your attention. First, the history of the English Bible, which includes many videos also about Bible translations. Second series is Manuscript Hunters, featuring episodes on the likes of Robert Curzon, Tischendorf, the Sisters of Sinai, Solomon Schechter, and others. And the third series, of course, we are currently bringing to you now, Cities of the New Testament. A total of 72 long-form videos and 27 short-form videos already exist on our channel. I'm beginning to add, and I'd like your feedback on this, AI-generated podcasts that summarize our content. I assure you that these audio podcasts are quite interesting and informative. They are based on curated sources that I provide for the episode. They're great for listening while driving or even just at home with a smartphone in your hand, somewhere between 50 and 30 minutes. I review them myself before sending them out. And many more new series and videos are forthcoming, so stay tuned. I hope this episode on Bethsaida, the last lost city of the Gospels, has been interesting to you. I encourage you to return to the New Testament and the Gospels and read again all that Jesus said and did around Bethsaida. Our next episode will continue this series on cities of the New Testament. Next city, yet to be determined. Which city would you like to see discussed? Let me know in the comments. Until then, stay healthy, wealthy, and wise, and we'll see you soon in the next episode of The League of Biblical Enthusiasts.